What is going on, my fellow movie nerds and geeks alike? Happy January Giallo. I'd be remiss not to at least get one little video in there to celebrate this month of Italian film. Since it's January Giallo, I figured we'd add to our Giallo film tier list today. Now, I know a lot of you out there were probably hoping that the Black Glove Killer would make an appearance, but sadly, he is busy as all hell, so he couldn't make it today. But he did write me a little letter, which I'll try to read in my best Black Glove Killer voice for you all, and let's see what he's been up to. Dear Bill and Vicky, I'm sorry I couldn't be there for your January Giallo month, but just know I'm there in spirit. They've got me flying all over the place to watch all these films that show my exploits. Hell, I might as well be hooked up to an IV of J&B whiskey. It's crazy, but so much fun. I must say I do miss hanging out at your apartment and talking these films with you two lovely people. And I miss you both greatly. Did you hear that Arrow Video might be releasing a 4K of The House with Laughing Windows? I'll definitely come back for that one whenever you talk about it. Anyway, enjoy talking about some of my films, and I'll see you shortly. Until next time, the Black Glove Killer. So thank you, Mr. Black Glove Killer. Speaking of which, if you want to see how we got here, how we have accumulated this list that we've got going on, feel free to check out any of the number of Giallo tier list videos we've done in the past. I will link them down below. We've done a ton so far. And for the uninitiated, let me just briefly describe what a Giallo film is. Giallo are Italian films that are generally characterized as gruesome murder mystery thrillers that combine the suspense elements of detective fiction with scenes of shocking horror featuring overt sexuality, excessive bloodletting, stylish camera work, and often jarring musical arrangements. Now, they don't always have to be Italian, but that's where they stemmed from back in like the late 1960s and early 70s, but they are still going today. But without further ado, let's get into the 3 films I want to add to our list today. Now, the first film we're going to be talking about today is 5 Women for the Killer from 1974. A reporter comes home from an overseas assignment to find his baby in the hospital and his wife dead. The mystery deepens when other people in the reporter's bubble start being killed in grisly fashion. Now, this one is a fun one that kind of went under the radar for me. It involves some dark elements. There is a killer on the loose that is murdering pregnant women. Very dark subject matter there, like mutilating female body parts and just like, that's dark as hell. Now, everyone in this reporter's life is just being wiped out, man. Like, we're talking anyone that he works with at his, like, newspaper agency, the doctors involved. It's wild and very deep. But the problem with this one is every character in this is almost like detestable. Like, you hate them. But I guess it works in Giallo fashion because, as Randy would say in Scream, everybody's a suspect! Now, this one is very Giallo-centric. You know, you have your gloved killer. It's a murder mystery, of course. There are red herrings galore, and there's lots of twists and turns along the way. Now, with this one, anyway, I kind of saw it coming that the killer would end up being, spoiler alert, female, is because of the gloves that the killer was wearing. Like, they're kind of very feminine in nature, at least in my opinion. Now, fans of the New York Ripper or Lucio Fulci films in general will get a kick out of this one because Howard Ross, who you might remember from New York Ripper as the man missing 2 fingers who's the prime suspect, he is actually the police inspector in this one. He's the one trying to solve all these murders, which is fun seeing him on the flip side of the coin, you know what I mean? Everyone in this reporter's life is essentially being systematically murdered. It's crazy. He befriends this female doctor who is just like this beautiful woman, and she tells him that even his baby might not be his. In fact, that he is sterile. Another dark element, but even she is attacked by the killer. Anyone female in this guy's life is being wiped out. There's even some really weird characters in this. Like, there's like this almost political guy who is cheating on his wife, like all the time, and his wife doesn't seem to care, and a girl he is seeing is all of a sudden saying she's pregnant and she gets killed. So it's like, wait a second, are they not just wiping out this reporter's colleagues? But anyway, that adds to the mystery of it all. Very Giallo-centric, like I said. There is J&B whiskey galore, lots of beautiful women, cool camera work. But it's just like, is it this reporter all along? It's gotta be, right? Who else could it be? Bruh. But the swerve of this one is that it ends up being his female doctor friend. And why she is committing all these murders, it's because she loves the reporter. And she's upset that, you know, he is just like a player sleeping with all these women and not her. And she's angry about that because she herself is infertile. That is why she's killing all these pregnant women, because she herself cannot carry a child. But what becomes cool about this one is there's another twist involved. In fact, the political guy who was sleeping around and his girl he was sleeping with getting murdered, it turns out that someone killed her as a means of making it look like our Giallo killer did it, just to kind of, you know, take the blame away from him. But it ends up being him all along, just trying to eliminate the pregnant girl that might affect his, you know, public standing. Very cool to add like another element, a second twist to the film. But I must say, Five Women for the Killer, because it's very classically Giallo, I loved it. I had a lot of fun with it. I love that it's just like your classic gloved killer, and I love seeing all the J&B whiskey, and all the sleazy elements are a lot of fun to witness, and I loved all the twists. There are so many twists in this one. This one is going to go in our good tier for sure. And next up, we're going to talk about Evil Judgment. This is a Canadian Giallo from 1984. A girl starts her own investigation after the police fail to catch a local serial killer. This one is an interesting one. It kind of starts out where we are introduced to this like person escaping a mental institution, and he is just slaughtering all the people in the hospital. It's very like slasher forwards, very not Giallo. But then we're introduced to our main character, who is this waitress who is struggling to make ends meet. She just doesn't know what to do, and she's dating this guy who is kind of related to the mafia in some way, and he is just an asshole. He just like, oh my god, he is one of like the most detestable characters I've ever seen in a Giallo film. But one of her best friends happens to be a hooker. So she's trying to convince her, like, you should be a hooker, man. We're making so much money. You won't need to worry about money, that's for sure. So after her boyfriend kind of pushes her too far, she actually decides to go with her friend and go and meet this, like, rich guy for a night of, like, you know, being a whore. What happens is a killer shows up to this guy's house and starts slaughtering her friend and this guy that they're supposed to be sleeping with. And it's very Argento inspired. Like all of a sudden, like the colors pop up on screen, very bright. And like there's a black glove killer who's slicing people with razor blades. You're just like, oh, so this isn't a slasher film. It is actually a Giallo film. You know, she is all of a sudden passes out and no one believes her. The cops don't believe her. Her boyfriend doesn't even believe her. So they're just like, oh, it must be your boyfriend who's doing all this. They're convinced it is the mafioso-related guy who is doing all these killings, but she is just like, no, I'm telling you, it is not. There's a killer out there. Well, she's got to solve this all on her own. The police are useless, which is classic Giallo trope. And the swerve of this one is, you almost forget about the beginning of the film because so much is going on, but it actually ends up being the escaped mental patient. But the swerve of it all is, this is where the title of the film comes into play. It just so happens to be that they do a switcheroo of a judge. And it happens to be this other judge who's doing all the killing, and like they replace him with this like other judge to hide the fact that he is in a mental institution. It's a whole thing, and honestly kind of confusing. If you're a fan of the slasher genre, this one definitely, because it's in the 80s, you know, it's got those like slasher elements where if you're new to the genre, you'll kind of appreciate this one. Now, there's obviously a lot of, you know, Argento-inspired colors in here. There's over-the-top kills and just sleazy moments galore, so you'll appreciate that. Where this one loses me is, like, it is so terribly acted and over-the-top goofy. I just couldn't fully get into it. But there is one scene in particular where we're at the diner where our main character works, and there's this like homeless guy, I guess, who is like having soup, and he just says this soup tastes like piss. And without warning or anything, he stands up on the chair and just starts pissing in the soup. Honestly, that scene alone makes this one worth a watch. Because of all like the shitty acting and kind of just like confusion and just over the top nature of it all, this one's gonna go in the meh tier. I think slasher fans will appreciate this one. Still a fun one. Thank you, Vinegar Syndrome, again for putting out a lesser seen Giallo film for anyone to check out. And next up, we're going to be talking about a late stage Dario Argento film, Sleepless, from 2001. A retired police detective and young amateur sleuth team up to find a serial killer who's resumed a killing spree in Turin, Italy after a 17-year hiatus. Now this is a neo Gialli, which is just like kind of fancy speak for saying it is a late stage Giallo. It is way past the prime. Dario Argento's late work seems to get a lot of scrutiny because it's just not, you know, up to par with his amazing work in the 70s and early 80s. I will say this one is actually kind of fun. It's definitely one of his better late stage works in my honest opinion. This one involves Max von Sydow, which is funny because it's like you're seeing Father Merrin from The Exorcist as this retired old cop, but it starts with like a murder in the beginning of the film where a young boy witnesses his mother being slaughtered in very grisly fashion. Sergio Stivoletti's effects work is insane. You see a woman being bludgeoned and just stabbed with a clarinet. It is brutal. Like, the practical effects are insane. Kudos to Stivoletti on that. But Max von Sydow, you know, he never solves this case. They think they solved it 17 years ago because they find this small person, a dwarf if you will. They call him the dwarf killer because they're convinced the killer is a midget who is doing all these killings. And the guy that they thought it was died. But Max von Sydow comes out of retirement because a woman is killed on a train because she finds the killer's like bag of like clues and evidence and stuff that's linking to all these crimes. And after she's killed on the train, her best friend is killed at the car park next to the train station because she finds the bag with all the clues in it. So Max von Sydow comes out of retirement because he's like, hey, this is definitely the dwarf killer. We've got to get on the case. So he goes and finds the young boy who is from ages ago. This one is very quirky for Dario Argento. Max von Sydow is talking to a parrot, asking the parrot to help him work on this case and solve the mystery. It is very over the top, but you'll never recover from seeing, you know, Father Merrin talking to a parrot being like, help me solve this case. Bruh. And another quirky element involved is the killer is killing in this one based on Animal Farm, which is, you know, very cool and interesting. And we also get a score by Goblin. If you know Argento, he always is working with Goblin. I don't think the Goblin score works entirely well in this one because it's like almost a little too rock and roll. It doesn't like fit the aesthetic, but still cool to hear them nonetheless every time. The young boy, you know, because he is like of age and adult nowadays, you know, we meet his best friend who invites him to stay with him, and you're just kind of like, wait a second, why are you doing this now? You haven't seen him in years, you know, red herring galore. And he falls in love with this harpist, which is, you know, gives us this lovely imagery here, who is like performing in a play, so it adds like a lot of cool, classic, almost like opera kind of vibes to the whole thing there. So we get sequences where people are being murdered at this play. Very cool. But this whole time, the regular cops are like, hey, stay out of our fucking investigation, Max von Sydow. You're just making things more difficult. Like, we can handle this. But Max von Sydow he's like, no, I know more about this case than anybody. We get a lot of nods to Argento's past work. Like, we get a lot of course, interesting camera moving through space. We get some colorful elements thrown in and interesting patterns on like the floor and like the windows. Classic Argento. But where it doesn't work for me here is it almost feels a little forced in this movie. Like, he's just like, hey, people are expecting this. I gotta put this in there. I think where this movie is most powerful is in the special effects work by Stivoletti. Like, the kills are brutal. Like, they are intense. You know, like I said, we get that brutal clarinet to the face killing in the beginning. We get a woman who is beaten to death in a insane manner. We get a guy who's stabbed in the temple. We get a woman decapitated, like in ballet garb. It's crazy. Where they lose me, though, is that all the sound effects in this sound like they are something straight out of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out from the NES. They are so fucking bad. And another thing that doesn't really work for me here is this almost like feeling that this is a made-for-TV movie. I don't know if it's like the cameras they were using, but it kind of takes me out of the film alongside like the bad sound effects. It's still a fun late-stage Argento film, and like the reveal of this one ends up being that it is, of course, the friend who invites the young boy from the beginning to stay with him, which, like, duh. Another swerve is that it's actually a duo of killers, where, like, it's also the young boy's father who's helping this kid cover up the killings, which is interesting. A duo of killers isn't really something you see all that often, except for, like, you know, Blood and Black Lace. There's, like, this homeless man who has made this dwarf dummy, which is, like, definitely a nod to Deep Red, but I don't really know the connection to it there. I guess it's just kind of like, so if anyone's witnessing the crime, they just see this, like, dummy, so they're like, oh my god, the dwarf killer's back. But the addition of Max von Sydow is very interesting, even though he's kind of phoning in this role. This one's worth a watch, definitely because of, like, the crazy over-the-top gore gags, and just, you know, it feels like a classic Giallo. And the Animal Farm quirky elements there are worth the price of admission. I mean, how many times are you going to see Father Merrin talking to a fucking parrot? It's ludicrous and over the top. But because it kind of feels like a TV movie, and the just terrible almost acting and made-for-TV movie kind of feeling this one gives me, this one's going into the meh tier for sure. But if you're, you know, an Argento completionist, this one's not that bad. Definitely worth checking out alongside, like, something like The Card Player. But alright guys, those are the 3 movies we're adding to our Giallo tier list today. I am sorry there's not more. We just kind of haven't watched a lot of newer Giallo films, or at least Giallo films we haven't seen. We kind of tend to watch it, like, sparsely, almost more so in other months. But I'd be remiss not to talk about Giallo in January, so that's why I wanted to at least, you know, add at least 3 to our list today. And once again, thank you to our good buddy, the Black Glove Killer. Sorry he couldn't be here today, but thank you so much, kind sir, for writing us that very nice letter. But thank you guys so much for always watching our silly videos. Happy January Giallo once again. We love you all so very much. We'll see you next time. Adios.